Welcome to Young Money with Tracy Bissett, the advice show for young millionaires in the making. It's time for some $1 Million Straight Talk with Tracy, President and Chief Financial Fitness Trainer at Bissett Financial Fitness. Each week, Tracy's going to tell you what you need to know now at the beginning of your earning curve. Basic and advanced financial concepts made clear, healthy money habits and the missteps to avoid, and all the stuff that you can do to set yourself up for a future of fantastic financial freedom. Ready to lace up and start this week's financial fitness training? Let's do it, Tracy.
Welcome to the Young Money Podcast. I'm really excited today. We have a very special guest, Rachel Richards. Welcome to the show, Rachel.
Hey, Tracy. Thanks for having me.
You are so welcome. And so at the age of 27, Rachel Richards quit her job and retired. She is now living off $15,000 per month in passive income. Rachel is the best-selling author of Money Honey and Passive Income, Aggressive Retirement. She is a former financial advisor and a real estate investor with almost 40 rental units. By making the topic of money management fun, entertaining, and simple, Rachel has helped thousands of millennials work their way out of financial despair. So welcome again, Rachel.
Thanks, Tracy.
Now, when I think about your bio and how you're living off the passive income, I'm just imagining you sitting at the beach most days, just relaxing. So maybe you can share a little bit more about yourself and what your day-to-day typically looks like.
Yeah, for sure. I thought about doing the beach thing, but the thing about me is I get bored so easily. So I knew that wasn't going to satisfy me long term. But I use the words retired and financially independent interchangeably. So it's not that I'm not working. I still have a purpose. I still have things I'm passionate about. But right now it's just about working when, where, and if I want. And right now it happens that I do want to work. I'm very passionate about teaching young people about financial literacy. So I probably work about 3 to 4 hours per day. And then I take the rest of the afternoon and evening off to work out or hike or just relax with my husband.
Excellent. And I love that when, where, and if I want, that's when I work. And I think that anybody who's listening would love to make that their goal. And so that you're really in control of it and you don't have to do it. But when you're choosing projects and things that you're working about, they're really important to you. So that's wonderful. Now, when you think about the success that you've had, and you've had so much already in your young life, what are some of the key success factors that have kept appearing or popping up that you think have led you to where you are now?
Yeah, there's definitely a couple things that come to mind. Number one is putting my mental health first before anything else. And I unfortunately learned this the hard way. I think a lot of us entrepreneurs can experience burnout and anxiety. And I did go through a period of anxiety that even led into depression about 1.5 years ago. So I learned some hard lessons. I learned some lessons about protecting my time. Up until then, I was saying yes to every request and every opportunity that came my way. And I realized that while that probably makes sense when you're first starting a business, there comes a point where if you keep doing that, you're going to hurt yourself. And all of a sudden, my calendar and my schedule was filling up with everyone else's priorities and not my own. And that became a source of constant stress for me and feeling like I didn't have control over my time. So I had to make some changes. I've learned to be very protective of my calendar. I've learned that saying no is one of the most powerful things you can do. It's still hard to do because my instinct is to say yes to everything, but I've learned to say no. And those strategies and switches have helped me really put my mental health first. So definitely feeling better than ever before and having a super productive year. And then another key success factor is that I have always been an avid reader. And when I was little, it used to be fiction books or stories or whatever. But I also got into nonfiction, especially in high school and in college. And I've always done it because I love it. But I realized that the amount of knowledge I've gained over 2 decades of reading hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books has definitely put me way ahead of my peers. A couple of my favorite books that come to mind are The War of Art, which is absolutely incredible. And I think any creative artist, writer, business owner should read it. And then The Millionaire Fastlane is another one of my favorites.
Excellent. So I'm a fan too of the War of Art. I've got to check out the Millionaire Fastlane though. So everybody who's listening, I'll put both of the links in the show notes so that you can easily check those out. But I so appreciate what you talked about, Rachel, about putting mental health first. I think anybody who's been around for a little while, that happens. You find out the hard way. And so certainly if you can put that into practice and make that a priority earlier on in your life, I think that sets you up really well. I love what you talked about protecting your time and saying no. As you mentioned, it's hard to do because then you feel bad because you're not doing things that people may want you to do, but it allows you to then show up really powerfully for the things that you purposely want to do and that are your priorities. So really love that. So thanks for sharing, because those are some very personal insights that I know the Young Money listeners will be able to learn a lot from. Now, when you think about your life and when you were a kid, you talked about when you were doing all that reading of the fiction books. Is there anything that you wish you had known earlier about money or personal finance? And it could be as early as a couple years ago, or it could be even back in your youth. So anything that you think would be great to share with us.
Yeah, there's a quote by Zig Ziglar. I don't remember exactly how it goes. It's like I think it's, you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. I think that's what Zig Ziglar said one time. And when it comes to money and when it comes to most things in life, that quote is absolutely true. I think a big mistake that young people make is, not taking it seriously soon enough. And if there's one thing I hear more than anything else from people, it's, man, I wish I had known this 10 years ago. I wish I'd known this when I was your age. And I did start at a young age relatively, but I still held myself back in ways. I didn't have the money to invest. I didn't think I was qualified. I had imposter syndrome. And so here's a really concrete example of that. With real estate investing, I always wanted to invest in rental properties. I first learned about it in high school, and I was holding myself back because I thought I didn't have enough money. But the thing is, if I knew what I know now about real estate investing, I would have realized that I could have started a lot sooner, because anyone can get into real estate investing without spending a dime by doing something called wholesaling. And so wholesaling, the hardest part of real estate investing is finding the deal. So wholesaling is when you go out and you find a deal, you make an offer on a property, you get something called an assignable contract, and then you sell that contract to other real estate investors for a fee. So essentially, you're getting paid to find the deals. I've seen wholesalers make 5, 10, 20 grand per deal. And soon enough, if you do just a couple of those deals, you'll have enough money to then invest in real estate on your own. Now, I didn't know that at the time, but it makes so much sense. It doesn't cost any money and you're learning as you go. So that's something I think anyone can do now with no excuses.
Excellent. And so you retired to be able to have the life of your choosing at age 27. And was real estate a big part of that, or were there other elements as well that contributed to your ability to do that?
Yeah, so real estate was definitely a big part of it. My journey of creating passive income, and just to quickly define passive income, it's money that you earn with little to no ongoing effort. Now, it's no get rich quick scheme. Okay, it does take time or money to create. But in my opinion, in my mind, it was going to be a lot easier to generate $5,000 or $6,000 or $8,000 a month in passive income than it was going to be to work all my life and save up a huge chunk of money so I could retire later. So I focused on passive income. In the beginning of 2017, I had $0 in passive income. Early that year, my husband and I purchased our first duplex. And then later that year, I wrote and launched my first best-selling book, Money Honey. So we had these two passive income streams, rental income and royalty income. And we focused on growing those as much as we possibly could over the next few years. So fast forward to today, we now own almost 40 units. I now have 2 best-selling books. The rental income is bringing in anywhere from $8,000 to $12,000 a month in profit. And then in February, I just had my first $7,000 month in book profits. So those are our two. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, so those are our 2 biggest passive income streams. We have 4 or 5 now, but that's what brings in most of our revenue these days.
Excellent. And I want to just touch on what you said to make sure everybody's taking it in. It wasn't that for the 40 rental units, she had 8 to 12,000 in total income. It was in profit. So that's after you paid all those expenses related to those properties, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
So just want to make sure everybody's, because you can get into something where you may have the income come in, but by the time you go ahead and make all those disbursements that go along with it, you may not be in a profit situation. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. And just going back to what you said right at the beginning, so you can work when, where, and if you want. And that passive income gives you that flexibility to decide what you want to do with your time. So you've taken a lot of steps to secure your financial future. Is there any that you haven't shared with us yet that you think would be meaningful for the listeners, or any other tips you can share from your experience, because you are extremely successful at a young age and think it's fantastic?
Oh, thank you. Yes, definitely a couple tips, especially for young people. Number one is I think there's this sort of common belief that when you have a full-time salary job, that means you have job security and income security. And if you're dependent on a single source of income, there's nothing secure about that. And we've seen that this year with COVID. You know, what happens when people lose their jobs, when their hours get cut, when they get laid off? All of a sudden your income goes to zero, and that's going to be a disaster. So that's where this concept of income diversification comes into place. How can you diversify your income so that it's coming in from multiple different sources? And again, this leads right back into passive income. You know, now I have 4 or 5 passive income streams, but here's a perfect example of how this has protected me in real life. Because earlier this year, when COVID first started happening, my rental income was impacted significantly. And so I went from having on average 10 grand a month in profit to, in April, I only made $1,000 from my rental income. Now, there was a lot of landlords that were worse off than me. There were a lot of people doing better than I was. And at the time, the way I saw it was, hey, if I break even for just a few months, that's fine. I'll be okay. And the only reason that I wasn't operating out of a place of panic or desperation is because I had all these other income streams keeping me afloat. So that just shows the importance of having multiple sources of income and really diversifying that. And then another tip that I think is important for young people and that really helped me secure my financial future is that I started investing at a young age. Young people, you know, time is your biggest advantage. We have decades in front of us that we can grow and accumulate our wealth by investing in the stock market. There's a question that's kind of fun that I ask people, and you may have heard it before, Tracy, but it goes like this. If I gave you a penny and I told you to double it every day for a month, how much money do you think you'd end up with after a month? And you can guess if you want. Most people will guess, you know, $5,000, $10,000, but you will end up with $5,368,709 just by doubling a penny every day for a month. So when I first heard that, that blew my mind, but it really illustrates the power of time and the power of compounding. Now, obviously, in the real world, you're not going to double your investment every year, but the concept still holds true. The earlier you can get started, the better. Even an expert investor who waits 10 years to start investing, they won't be doing as well as you if you get started now. So time is your biggest advantage.
For sure. I can't agree more. And then we always think about the flip side of the compound interest when it's on our debt. So if we're sitting in debt, particularly credit card debt, we're just magnifying how much we've got to pay back. So compounding is critical to understand. And I love how you framed it, that time is your biggest advantage. So you've talked about some great, really practical tips that are easy to implement with a plan and being focused and just getting started. I'm sure that you've at least seen it with other people and you may have had some missteps on your own. What can you share to illuminate some of those for the listeners so they can make different mistakes or maybe none at all, which might be a bit of a stretch, but let's try to get them to make some different ones. What missteps can you share?
I think there's a lot of missteps around college these days because the costs of college have ballooned just over the past decade, and it's really placed an enormous burden on my generation. Now, I think people are finally waking up and realizing maybe this isn't a great investment, but I think we still have some work to do. And I'm not saying college isn't a good investment. Obviously, if you want to become a lawyer or a doctor, you have to have your 4-year degree and then also a graduate degree. I'm just saying that maybe there are other options to consider. Maybe you can go to a trade school or vocational school. Maybe you can go to a community college and then transfer your credits into a public or private university. So, just be aware of that. Look at all of your options. Don't just go to college blindly because that's what everyone else does.
For sure. If I could just jump in on that one. So in Canada, we find the exact same thing. We've got colleges and universities. Certainly in the past, we would have advocated that you go right when you finish high school. But now I think the prevailing school of thought is let's think through, what do you like to do? What are you going to reasonably like to do in your career? And make sure that the debt that you're going to take on is really kind of commensurate with where you're going to end up with a salary. And does that make sense? And if you're not sure what you want to do, take maybe that gap year to see, so that you're not just incurring all this debt without really a plan to put it together in your career. So thanks for raising that. Certainly we have high debt levels from a student debt standpoint here. And I know in the US it's even higher.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's nuts. It's definitely a growing problem. And then I was going to say the second side of that coin is once you've gone to college and you've graduated and you have student debt, a big mistake I see young people make is when they go to consolidate their student loans. Now, consolidation can be a great thing, but what happens a lot of the time is that someone will go to consolidate their student loans. They'll see that they're getting a lower monthly payment and they'll think, oh, this is great, I'm saving money. But in reality, they're not, because what's happening is the life of the loan is actually being extended. And when that happens, they're going to pay even more money over the life of the loan. So I always just like to point out that the only way to really save money with student loan consolidation is to lower your interest rate and stick to the original term length of the loan.
Excellent. And the other thing as well, certainly with the government programs in Canada, when you do consolidate student debt, you sometimes give up some of those nice rights and remedies that you have to maybe skip payments, maybe to defer. So you want to make sure you're looking at that as well, in addition to getting that lower rate. And I love how you said stick with the original amortization, because you want to get rid of that debt so you can move on to other milestones in your life.
Yes, and that's a good point too, Tracy. It's the same thing here in the US, that if you consolidate your federal loans, sometimes that resets any progress you've made towards some of those forgiveness plans or forgiveness options. So definitely something to keep in mind.
Excellent. Now, before I let you go, are there any new things you'd like to share with the Young Money listeners, or any final messages you want to reiterate, because they're just so important to you and you don't want anybody to miss them?
Yeah, I think I'd just love to reiterate how attainable passive income is for everybody. I truly believe anyone at any age and on any income can absolutely achieve financial independence through passive income.
Excellent. And I loved so much how you shared about having that income diversification. You want to make sure that you're setting yourself up for a lifetime of success, and having that one full-time job is not necessarily going to cut it. So be open to opportunities and take those opportunities to learn. Now, what are you working on now that you'd love to share with the listeners, and where can people go to learn more about you if they want to find out after they listen?
Yeah, so I just launched a new online course called Get Your Financial Bleep Together, and that's been a lot of fun. Also, in September, I'm about to release the second edition of Money Honey. So those are kind of my new things that I'm working on and that are coming up. I'm also starting to dabble in fiction just for fun. So that's been a new hobby.
Any particular themes for your fiction?
I don't know. What's so hard is just coming up with a plot idea. Some of these storylines blow my mind. I have no idea how people do it.
It's interesting. We have a financial writer and commentator in Canada, Melissa Leong. And so in addition to her financial writings, she's wrote a fiction series about vampires. So
Oh, cool.
it's interesting the way that you can write about so many different things.
Yeah, definitely nonfiction's my forte, but I'm just doing this for fun, so we'll see where it goes.
Well, we'll be interested to see what comes out of that. And certainly for people wanting to either connect with you or find out more about you, how can they do that?
Yeah, so you can purchase my books, Money Honey and Passive Income Aggressive Retirements, on Amazon. And then also I'd love to offer your listeners my passive income starter kit for free. So if anyone wants to download that, you can go to moneyhoneyrachel.com/bonus.
Excellent. And we will put that in the show notes so everybody can get their hands on that. And as Rachel talked about, it's super important to keep learning. She's done that through being an avid reader. And so this would be a great way for you to learn more about passive income, to really expand things and then see where that takes you from there. So thank you so much, Rachel, for joining us today.
Yes, thanks, Tracy.
I know that I am taking away so many great points, as I'm sure the listeners are. I loved what you shared about your key success factors. That Zig Ziglar quote, I have heard it quite often, and it's so true. You don't have to be great to start. You have to start to be great. And I think anybody who is doing anything in their life, whether financial or otherwise, certainly putting that into practice is wonderful. Those tips that you shared about thinking that having the full-time salary equates to job and income security, certainly we've seen that's not the case. And just making the most of your young age and being able to do that investing, and then really considering when you go to post-secondary, how that's going to look, what are you going to be saddled with from a debt perspective, and does it make sense? So thank you so much, Rachel.
Yeah, thanks again for having me on.
So there you have it, young money listeners. Rachel Richards, retired at the age of 27, now living off $15,000 per month in passive income. And as she mentioned, she is the best-selling author of Money Honey and Passive Income Aggressive Retirement. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure you did too. Until next time, take good care and stay financially fit.
Hey, thanks for tuning in. To all you millionaires in the making out there, if you love this podcast, please subscribe on iTunes to keep your financial fitness training going. Oh, and leave us a review. And be sure to visit Visit, 2 S's, 2 T's, financialfitness.com to take your free financial fitness assessment. Find out how financially fit you really are. See you next week, young millionaires to be.